2 more to go in my demo. I think we're doing pretty good on time. Excelling Studio is an expert tool that we came up with because we kept getting, and our clients kept getting very complex and quote unquote silly multilingual Excel sheets. So something like columns B and C contain the source, and then the target language 1 goes into DE and language 2 goes into FJ. And by the way, only if the background of the cells is green and if column B contains an X. Oh, and by the way, in column J, we have a length restriction in pixel. And by the way, in yet another column, we define the font size so that you can actually calculate the length restriction. And by the way, if there's an X in column A, then that means the content has actually changed since the last translation. So in this case, please do extract the existing translation from the Excel sheet, but don't lock it because it needs to be reviewed. So all kinds of crazy requirements that you get over time in Excel. So it can be really simple, just a multilingual Excel sheet, but it can also be very complex. And the way it works is that we define the export. So we have a wizard where you can go through and exactly define what you want to do, including things like length check, updates, comments. You can also use it for alignment, of course. So you could basically convert a multilingual Excel file into several SDL XLIF files for each language pair, and then just import that into the TM. So you can do that if you have, I don't know, like a 30 language Excel file. And for translation, we actually create language-specific XML files. So every target language can be different, of course, because it could be that language 1 had already had 200 lines translated, language 2 only had 50 lines translated, and language 3 had nothing at all translated. So it's a language-specific XML file from which you can then set up a Studio project. So again, let me show you on the right. No, I need to go in here still. There we go. Too many different ones. So before I show you what we're going to configure, let me show you the demo file. Here it is, Excelling Studio. So I have 2 different ones. I have the demo 1 and demo 2, and a copy each. I'm going to open it in my unlicensed Excel. So here I have German source, I have English, French, Spanish, I have a length restriction, and I have a comment. So that's actually fairly simple. Let's go for this one. Where is Excelling? I thought I started it already. Well, let me start it now. And of course, I've prepared this already for the demo, so I don't have to go through and actually configure everything from scratch. So in here, I say, okay, this is where I configure my tasks. So demo 1, I'm gonna go through here. I'm gonna say edit. I provide a sample XLS file for the configuration so that we can read the column names and all of that. You can also provide a source file pattern. What that means is if you always get, I don't know, let's say 10 different kinds of Excel files and you get them like daily, but you know which one is which because they have a certain naming convention, then you can have this file pattern in here, and Excelling Studio will automatically recognize or realize, this is Excel file type 1, so I'm going to use the task definition of type 1. Otherwise, you always have to choose it manually. In this case, sorry, my source file is German, so it reads the table, the worksheet, I think it's in English, it reads that in German. So we're only interested in worksheet 1, actually. And in this particular case, my source language for my translation is German, and the other languages are English, French, and Spanish. Of course, I can add and delete, etc. And now I tell it where do you actually find this information. So German is actually in column A. You can see it read all the column names. And then the English column is B. And then it says the same thing again, seemingly. It says the target column is language B again. So it could be that there's already a translation there. If so, of course, extract it, please. I don't want to retranslate it if it's already there. But in this case, I'm going to write it back to the same column. So we're just going to update essentially the missing ones. But we've had cases where it says, well, there's an old translation in column B, but I want to have the new translation in column C. So you could also configure it that way. In this case, it's always the same. We don't have multi-line segments in this particular case. We don't want to restrict anything. We're just going to extract everything. We do, however, have a size restriction. It's a character-based size restriction. So the options are character or pixel or external. So we've had clients that have like a external width calculation tool that they have created. We can isolate that as a Visual Basic code or whatever and plug it in here. The advantage of that is that then the length check is of course done in Studio. Yeah, so you don't need to wait until the Excel file is finished and then we calculate and check the length. But we actually do that in Studio already so that the translator interactively will get the message, sorry, this text is too long, please shorten it. We don't have a height restriction in this case, so it's only one line, so there is no height. We do have comments, it's in column F, and we don't have any of the other stuff, so I'll get back to that later. So we have actually created the task, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this. So I'm going to take my, where's my demo file, Excelling Studio. I'm just going to throw that on here. I'm going to say the output should be on my desktop. I'm going to create a new folder to put it in here. And since I did not define a template, I actually have to manually say and use this task for the extraction. And then I'm going to click on export and that's it. So it already exported this successfully and it should now be here, new folder 2. So you can see we got a log file, so it tells us what exactly it did. And it creates an XML file per target language. And from this, we can now create a Studio project. So in here, I can then say create a new project, default template, whatever. And then a nice thing also is if I now, okay, that's too bad. I don't have a template that actually matches that. Or maybe I do. Let me just jump back briefly. I might actually have a template here. No, I don't. Do I have a previous project? No, I don't either. But basically, the nice thing is when we create this project and we add the entire folder, it automatically detects which file is for which target language. So you don't end up with every file for every target language, but we detect that. Then you translate it just normally in Studio. Of course, we have the length check that's built into the Studio as a into the file type. So it's a custom file type that does this length checking among other things. And then when you're done, essentially what you do is you say import, and you give it the source Excel file and the Studio project folder, and you say import, and it updates the source Excel file. So that obviously it goes back into the Excel file, of course. A little bit more complicated. Let's look at this demo 2 for a second. Yeah, so you can see this is a bit more fun. So to start with, it's not only one line, but for instance, this text here is actually 2 lines. So is this one, but then this one is only 1, and this one is 2. And you can see that because the ID changes. We have a max length, we have a comment, we had all that. We have a column here that's called check translation. So if that contains an X, even though there's something here already, we don't want to lock this content. This content we just want to lock, put it in the SDL file, but lock it, don't bother. But this one, please don't lock it. Maybe even make it a 97% match so that the translator knows this needs to be reviewed. And then of course we have some stuff that is completely new. This is also interesting. So here the client said, if it has black background, I don't want to translate it into this particular language. So this is not uncommon. LSPs among you will say, oh yeah, we get these all the time. We actually have some printouts of Excel files on like A4 that you can put up on your wall because it looks like modern art. So this is quite common, but we can configure most of this with Excelling Studio. So let me show you what we did here. I have my demo 2. Again, only worksheet 1. Again, I have my languages. That's all pretty simple. But now here, we actually say we have a multi-line segment. So I want to merge several lines into one Studio segment. And I can tell that a new segment starts because there is a new ID in column A. We can also do several columns. So if you, in this case, we have, 2 or more lines that form one joint segment. But you could also do this with 2 or more columns, and then we would just say, well, it's always, I don't know, 2 additional columns or something like that. Then I lost my setting down here because it's either or, of course. So let me put that back here. Yeah. I don't want to restrict the extraction, so just extract everything. But we could, for instance, also exclude hidden rows, or I don't know, some ranges where we say I don't want to extract, I don't know, lines 1 to 375 because they're all done already. Then for the target language, we have a size restriction based on character, but not counted individually, but joined together as a segment. We put a new line character there so that the translator understands, it's a 2-line segment actually. And the width restriction itself is then found in column C. By the way, we could define a regular expression. So for instance, if it's not just a number, but it says some weird thing like, please only translate XYZ characters or something silly like that, you could put that into a regex as well. We can also say it shouldn't have more than, in this case, 2 lines height. Again, you could read that from somewhere. You could automatically wrap it, all kinds of stuff. Comments we've had already. We don't want to trim white spaces, but what we want to do is we want to not write the translation, or as a matter of fact, not even extract the source text for these languages, because it makes no sense to translate something that then not write it back. So in this case, everything that's black, please don't translate into that particular language. Or it could be the other way around. Of course, then the first one goes away. So it's either restricting, it's either disabling or it's enabling only for a particular color. Also, we want to export existing translations, but we want to, we can say, okay, give this 3% penalty for all the ones where the column check translation contains the value X, for instance, except for segments 200 to 237 or something like that. All the ones that are actually okay, so where we don't have an X, we want to approve and lock them. And again, you could still further detail that. And then I think that was pretty much it. Yeah, we're done executing or defining that. And then the sequence is the same. So I just say export this. I throw it on here via drag and drop. I create yet another new folder. I click export and I get the same thing. I think you get the idea here. So that's SDL Studio. So I think where did my PowerPoint file go? I think the use cases are clear, or rather I had them in here already anyhow. So it's these wild and silly multilingual Excel sheets that become parsable and translatable with this tool.